maybe that's our opportunity. I wonder if we could get inside the house during the party tonight. What do you think? I'd love to give it a try, she whispered. Everybody who comes to the so-called fetish ball will be in costume, right? Presumably? Somebody needs to get inside that house. We need to do something. Kyle stared directly at Jamila and me. He raised his voice. Can we have one meeting? He means, can he have his meeting? She whispered. I wondered why she had taken such a dislike to Kyle. He was acting strange, though. The pressure of the case was getting to him. Something had him on edge. Tell him what you think, I said. He'll listen, especially now that the girl is missing. I doubt it. But what can he do? Fire me? She swiveled around to face Kyle. I think we could probably get inside the house tonight during the party. And if we don't, what do we lose? The missing girl might be in there. Kyle hesitated, but then he said, Do it. Let's see what's in the house. Chapter 71. It could only happen like this in New Orleans. I spent part of the afternoon securing a couple of printed invitations, and then Jamila and I prepared our costumes for that night. The ball began at midnight, but we'd heard that most of the crowd wouldn't start to arrive until closer to 2. It had already been a long night for us by the time the festivities started. We waited until just past 2 to approach the house. Some of the partygoers were college age, a few were even younger, but at least half of the crowd looked to be 30 or older. A few arrived in limousines and other expensive cars. The dress for the night was definitely eye-catching. Antique morning coats and top hats, velvet Victorian gowns, corsets, walking sticks, tiaras. The goth crowd sheathed their androgynous bodies mostly in black leather and velvet, with frilly white and black lace on several of the women. There were body piercings everywhere, belly rings, dog collars, black lipstick, and gobs of mascara on both the men and the women. Blood-red eyes stared from every direction. It was difficult to look away from them. A song called Pistol Grip Pump played from hidden speakers outside the house. Fangs were everywhere, and stage blood. A few of the women wore black or purple velvet bands around their necks, presumably to conceal bite marks. It got more interesting and eerie inside the house. People were addressing one another with titled names: Sir Nicholas, Mistress Anne, the Baroness, Prince William, Master Ormson. A statuesque woman walked by and brazenly sized up Jamila. She was bronzed with body paint and wore a bronze-colored thong. The iron scent of blood mingled with smoky leather and pungent oil from wall torches. Jamila looked ready. She was definitely tough. She had on a tight, sleek black dress with leather boots and black stockings. If she wanted to look sexy, she'd succeeded. She'd purchased black lipstick and leather wristbands at a place called the Little Shop of Fantasy on Dumaine Street. She'd also helped me with my outfit: a morning coat that scraped the floor, cravat, black trousers, and black boots that came to my knees. No one seemed to pay much attention to the two of us. We checked out the main floor, then flowed with the crowd down into the basement. There were flaming torches everywhere on the stone walls. The floors were dirt and stone. It was cold and damp and musty. Jesus, Alex, Jamila whispered close to my ear. She took my arm, held it tight. I don't think I would have believed it if I wasn't standing right here. I felt exactly the same. Many of those congregating downstairs wore canine teeth that were terrifying, especially in such large numbers. Electrified candelabras and fiery torches were the only sources of light. I saw human skulls nailed into the walls, and I was sure they were real. I started checking to make sure we could get out of there if we had to. I wasn't sure about a quick escape. The crowd was thickening, and the feeling was claustrophobic. I wondered if someone was supposed to die here tonight. If so, who? Then I heard a deep voice announce, "The sire is here. Bow your heads." Chapter 72. The cavernous underground room was quiet and tense. I had the uncomfortable feeling that I was about to see something I wasn't supposed to. Then Daniel Erickson and Charles Defoe made their grand entrance. The magicians epitomized outrageous bohemian royalty. The audience of faithful obediently bowed their heads. Both men were physically impressive. Charles was bare-chested and wore skin-tight leather pants with boots. He was an erotic-looking man with a powerful build. Daniel had on a tight black frock coat with black trousers and a black silk cravat. He was well-muscled but slender at the waist. Tugging against a heavy metal leash in front of them was a white Bengal tiger. Jamila and I exchanged looks. "This is getting interesting in a hurry," she whispered. Daniel stopped to talk with several of the young men. I remembered that the earliest murder victims were all men. The tiger was less than 10 feet away from me. What part did it play in this? Was it just a symbol? And for what? Charles came and stood next to Daniel against the far wall. He whispered something close to Daniel's face. They laughed and looked around the room. Daniel finally spoke in a loud, clear voice. I could tell he expected to be listened to. His confidence was charismatic. "I am the sire. What a vibrant and alive gathering this is," he said. "I can feel the energy coursing through this room. It excites me. The force harnessed here knows no limits. Believe in it. Believe in yourselves. Tonight is a special night, so come with me to the next room, the next level. Come, if you believe. Or even better, if you don't." Chapter 73. I had never seen anything like this. Jamila and I were quiet and wide-eyed as we entered an even larger chamber in the basement. The room was lit by wall sconces, most of them electric. The brutal fangs gleamed everywhere. The white tiger had begun to growl, and I recalled the bites into human flesh. If you hunt for vampires. What was happening in this eerie cellar? What was the purpose of tonight's gathering? Who were these ghouls? Hundreds of them. Daniel and Charles stood beside two tall, handsome men in satiny black robes. They looked to be in their early 20s, maybe even younger. They looked like young gods. Everyone crowded forward to see what would happen next. "I am here to anoint 2 new vampire princes," Daniel announced with grave authority. The persona was the same one he used on stage. "Bow before them." A woman in front screamed, "Our princes!" she shrieked. "Dark princes, I worship you!" "Silence!" Charles shouted. "Take that stupid cow out of here. Banish her!" The lights suddenly blinked once, then went out completely. The few burning torches were doused. I reached for Jamila, and we slid back toward the nearest wall. I couldn't see anything. I felt a cold spot at the center of my chest. "What the hell is happening, Alex?" "I don't know. Let's keep together." It got crazy very fast in the darkness. People screamed. A whip cracked nearby. It was madness, chaos, sheer terror. Jamila and I had our guns out. There wasn't anything we could do in the dark. A minute or so passed. Everything was inky blackness. It seemed like a very long time, too long. I was afraid of being stabbed or bitten. A generator kicked in somewhere in the house. The lights in the cellar flickered, then went on again. Then off. Then on to stay. I saw after images, rings of color, and then the magicians had disappeared. Someone shouted, "There's been a murder! Oh God, they're both dead!" Chapter 74. I pushed my way through the shocked crowd and didn't meet resistance. Then I saw the bodies. The 2 young men in black robes lay sprawled on the cellar floor. They had been stabbed and their throats cut. Blood was pooled around the bodies. Where were Daniel and Charles? "Police," I called out. "Don't touch them. Back away." The men and women closest to the bodies slunk away. I wondered if they had been about to drink the spilled blood. Wasn't that the ritual? The pattern for the ghoulish murders so far? "There's only 2 of them! 2 cops!" someone shouted. "We will shoot you," Jamila called out in a loud, clear voice. "Back away. Do it." "Where are Daniel and Charles?" I shouted. The crowd began to close in on us, so I fired off a warning shot. It echoed loudly. The shot created renewed chaos in the cellar. Men and women began struggling to get through the doors. No one was getting away, though. FBI agents were waiting outside. Jamila and I pushed our way into a connecting room in the basement. We started down a narrow hallway lit only by candles. Daniel and Charles could have come this way when the lights went out. It seemed likely. They knew the house. There were small rooms crowded next to one another on either side of the dusty tunnel. The layout reminded me of ancient catacombs. Everything was closed in, musty, damp, depressing as hell. Scary. "You okay?" I glanced back at Jamila. "I'm fine, so far anyway. This place is starting to grow on me," she wisecracked. Her eyes darted about, though. I could hear Kyle's voice calling to us. The FBI was inside now. "Anything up there?" "Alex, you see anything?" "Not yet. Daniel and Charles took off when the lights went out. No sign of them." We moved cautiously, checking each of the rooms. Most of the space seemed to be used for storage. A few were completely empty, dank and eerie, like tombs. Atmospheric, I suppose. Spooky for sure. I kicked open another door. Jamila and I peered in. She gasped. Her mouth opened in a silent scream. "Oh, Jesus! Alex! What the hell happened?" I reached out and held onto her arm. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I couldn't make myself believe it. My knees went weak. Daniel and Charles were laid out on the floor of the room. They had been murdered. I was too stunned to speak. Kyle came into the room behind us, said not a word. We moved closer to the bodies, but I knew they were dead. The throats of both men had been cut, and there were deep bites, fang marks. So who was the sire now? Part 4. Hunt. Chapter 75. Late the following afternoon, Jamila had to return to San Francisco. She pretty much admitted that she was burned out and baffled. I gave her a ride to the airport, and we continued to talk about the murder case all the way there. We realized we were both obsessing. What had happened the night before changed everything. We had tracked down the supposed killers, and they had been killed. This was a complex and thoroughly annoying murder mess in which anything seemed possible. The killers weren't necessarily clever, but they were full of surprises. "Where do you go from here, Alex?" she asked, as we turned into the airport. I laughed. "Oh, now it's where do I go?" "You know what I mean. Come on." "I'll probably stay down here for another day or two, see if I can help out. Everyone who's in the house, at least the ones who were caught, are being held by the New Orleans police. That's a lot of freaks to be interviewed. Somebody has to know something. If you can get anything out of them." "You think the New Orleans cops are cooperating now? They sure weren't before." I smiled. "You know how stubborn local cops can be. We'll get what we need. It just might take a little longer. I'm sure that's part of the reason Kyle wants me to stay on." She frowned at the mention of Kyle's name. I knew she was disappointed to be leaving, though. "I have to get back home, but I'm not going to drop this one. My friend Tim at the Examiner is doing another big piece on the California murders. Maybe it all started out there. Think about it." 11 years ago. Maybe more, I said. But who were the first killers? Daniel Erickson and Charles Defoe? Someone else in the cult? Is there a cult? She threw her hands up in the air. "I have no idea at this point. I'm practically brain dead. I'm going to get on my plane and sleep all the way home." We talked some more about the weirdness of the case. Then I asked her about Tim at the Examiner. "Just a friend," she said. Jamila and I shook hands at the curbside luggage drop in front of the area marked for American Airlines. Then she leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. I slid my hand behind